Hi, and welcome back to part 2 of chapter 5. I'll put this down here, maybe you won't get in the way of the type as much. So we've talked about strategies, growth, maintenance, or shrinking strategies, and the possibilities within a marketing plan. So let's talk about objectives. And this is one of my pet favorite topics because being able to measure things is really important. So when we set a marketing plan, we're setting a long-term goal and we're setting short-term objectives. We have to set objectives that are measurable. If we don't have measurable objectives, then we're never going to know if we're getting where we want to go. So first of all, before we get there, let's talk about what objectives, how we create an objective. It obviously depends on the current situation. What's the world look like right now where we are for our product? So we're going to set objectives both short and long term based on the current situation. What's happening in the outside environment, sort of that external thing, that's a big part of it. And so here I'm using environment to talk about things happening in the outside, not necessarily what we think of as environmental, like the picture there in the back. That's pretty wild and pretty sight there. Recently around here, we had an ice storm, and I took that picture right after the ice storm. What are our objectives for specific customers in the various segments that we're targeting? If we're just targeting one segment, then we want to know the objectives for the customers in that segment, but then we might be targeting multiple segments, so we may have to have multiple measurable objectives in each one of the segments. What are our mission and goals? We talked about that in setting the strategy. We have to know what we're trying to do in order to make our objectives in concert with our mission and goals. And also, how are we positioning the product? Are we positioning it as a mass market product or a product for everyone? Or are we positioning it in a narrower sense? So we talked a lot about segmentation last time, so that has a lot to do with positioning. We need to know that before we can create a marketing strategy. We need to know what our segmentation strategy is and how we are going to position our product. One of the things that hopefully you've discussed in your first and show case study. So objectives. That first line is what I'm all about. Specific objectives. We have to be able to define them specifically. They have to have a timeline. I expect to accomplish this by this time. And we have to be able to measure them in some way. Doesn't mean we have to measure them with dollars and cents. They have to be measurable. Customer satisfaction. How am I going to measure it? Well, maybe I have to do surveys. Market share. How am I going to measure it? That becomes more of a numeric measurement. Quality. How am I going to measure it? Well, we're going to use some kind of a quality measurement. Number of repairs, number of warranty issues, whatever that might be. Our objectives have to be achievable or realistic and also challenging. If we set unrealistic objectives that can't be met, the objectives are not going to do what they're supposed to do. If we set objectives that are really easy to meet, once again, we're not going to challenge ourselves. We're not going to reach our potential because we haven't set the objectives as a reach. So realistic objectives, but challenging objectives. So those first four things: specific, time-defined, measurable, realistic but challenging. That's the key to setting objectives, whatever we're doing. And this applies to marketing. It applies to any kind of a strategic thought process. Specific objectives that we can have a time when we expect to achieve them. When we get to that time, we can measure our achievement or non-achievement, and that whatever they're set up as, they are achievable, but we're gonna have to stretch to get there. So that's kind of the key. They need to be consistent, obviously, with mission and goals. We talked about that earlier. Consistent with internal strengths and weaknesses, consistent with external opportunities and threats. So those are how we set objectives. You're going to see, by the way, you're going to see the same kind of thing. Your capstone course in this degree is a strategy course. The same thing, exactly the same thing. So strategy for an overall organization is the same as strategy for marketing. So there are lots of parallels. So you'll see that kind of thing again at some point in time in your before you get your degree here. So we can break the marketing objectives down into three things: marketing objectives, financial objectives, and social objectives or societal objectives. So marketing objectives: relationships, activities, customer satisfaction, number of outlets, penetration of channels. How many, I want to be in this channel and I want to have 500 storefronts selling my product or 50 websites selling my product. Those are targets, marketing objective targets. Financial objectives: sales, return on investment. Market share kind of goes between marketing objectives and financial objectives. People consider it in one and some in the other, but market share is certainly there. Efficiency of producing products, all sorts of different things. Hitting a target price might be a financial objective. It might also be a marketing objective. And then social objectives, social responsibility objectives. When we read that North Face article that I sent you, there was a lot of talk about social responsibility, about protecting the environment, about making products in a responsible manner. Those are social responsibility objectives. Depends on the organization, what those might be, and sometimes the social objectives themselves are used as part of the marketing. North Face certainly does that. By being involved in all sorts of conservation efforts, they do that. Somebody mentioned in one of their postings, Patagonia, who has really focused their whole image around social responsibility. So we can do that. That becomes part of marketing. But even if we're not using it for marketing, what are our goals for social responsibility? What are we trying to do? And they may be big environmental goals, or they may be local community goals, or they may be goals for our employees, or goals for our customers, all sorts of different things. So social objectives are important. So we can break the things down into those three categories. So let's look at marketing objectives. Customer acquisition. I currently am launching a new product, and at the end of 3 months, I want to have 1,000 customers. Okay, that's measurable. It's time defined, 3 months. And it's presumably, we don't know what the product is, but it's realizable. We can get there. Maybe it's a stretch. Customer retention. I want to maintain customers for some period of time. That's a big measurement for cell phone users and for cell phone companies, and also for entertainment providers like Netflix. How long can I retain customers? Do I have customer churn? Yeah, I acquired a whole bunch of new customers this month, but did I keep the ones I already had, or did I lose them? Customer retention is a big metric, marketing metric or objective, because getting new customers is expensive. Keeping customers is generally not as expensive. How satisfied are my customers? Do they like my service? Do they like my product? Are they happy with me? That's usually done by survey to measurement. Channel relationships. How are my relationships with my downstream channels? the stores that are selling my product, the distributors that are distributing my product, the brokers that are selling my product. What are my relationships and how good are those? Once again, it's somewhat subjective, but we can survey. We can do surveys to do that. Unit sales. So we're not using margins or dollars here. We're using units. I want to sell 10,000 cans of First in Show in the first 3 months. That's a unit sale target. It's time defined and measurable. And I don't know whether the 10,000 is a stretch or not, but whatever. Market share. And I said market share could fit here or down in the financial objectives, but we'll look at it here as a marketing objective. Market share is just how much of a particular market, a target market, I have. So I have currently 5% of a target market, and my goal is to have 7% at the end of 6 months. I want to grow my market share from 5% to 7%. Now, obviously, to compute this, you need to know the overall size of the market. If you know the overall size, you can compute your share of that overall size. Sometimes that's available, sometimes it's not. Depends on the market. Product development. I want to develop new products, and I want to be able to do it in 6 months. From the time that we come up with an idea to the time that I get the product to market, I want it to be at 6 months. Currently, it takes me a year. So my objective is to reduce product development time from 1 year to 6 months. And I might have interim objectives to get to the final goal of a 6-month product development cycle. And then order fulfillment, this gets into the logistics side. How long does it take me to get orders filled? And that's a very measurable thing. And maybe that's an important part of my marketing plan, getting the product to my customer as soon as they need it and getting 100% of it there. So order fulfillment can be a measurement too. Financial objectives. Obviously have to be consistent with my marketing objectives. If my market share numbers are something, then my sales volume are going to be, or my unit sales market targets or something, my sales volume is going to be related to that. So they have to be consistent. Sales and product volume targets, profitability targets, return on investment targets, and break-even targets. All financial objectives, and there's obviously others, but those are kind of some standard ones. So here we're looking at numbers. How do we get to the numbers we're trying to get to? Societal objectives, they may be very core to the company's mission or the organization's mission. Remember, nonprofits market as well as for-profit companies market. So nonprofits often have a very strong mission statement. Education or healthcare or whatever they might be in. It can be used as an important connection with customers, which we already just discussed with North Face and Patagonia. And they generally are part of a sustainable success. So if I'm meeting social objectives, then I probably have a sustainable model. If I'm not, if I'm meeting, let's say, my financial objectives, and maybe even my marketing objectives, but I'm not meeting social objectives, at some point I'm probably going to hit a wall, because social objectives will start putting up barriers to my success in other areas. Whenever you do, you have to sell it inside the organization before you sell it outside. And many, many companies forget this, especially small and medium-sized companies. We've got this great new idea. This is what we're going to do. Here's the marketing plan. And now we're going to implement it. And we didn't sell it to the existing employees. If we don't sell it to the existing employees, employees have a huge amount of power, and they can block or hamper or handicap our future plans. So really, really important to have internal marketing as part of it. And then the second piece is customer service. Stick with internal marketing for a second. We can do internal marketing with internal newsletters, web pages, training meetings, marketing or sales meetings. My favorite way in the companies I ran was walking around. I ran relatively small organizations, maybe 100 to 200 employees at times, but that wasn't too many to walk around and meet and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. It's going to be a great opportunity. What do you think? Da, da, da. That's very powerful. Social media inside an organization, there's lots of different kinds of things you can do inside an organization, social media wise, to let people know. If you don't get buy-in from your employees, you have a problem. So you have to get buy-in. If your employees buy into whatever it is you're doing, then they will help or try to make whatever it is you're doing succeed. If you don't get buy-in, they may well try to make you fail. They see it as a threat to themselves or whatever, and they may well try to make you fail. Early on in my career, I learned that firsthand. I was running an organization, saw an opportunity to acquire another organization, did it all at the executive level, did the acquisition, and the existing organization saw it as a massive threat. And the people in that organization, and I think reasonably so, resisted. They're going to go over here, they're going to invest money over here, they're going to forget about investing money with us in the existing part of the organization, and therefore this is a bad thing for us. We want to block it. And it took me 6 to 9 months to turn that around once I realized what I'd done. It was my mistake, not my employee's mistake. It was my mistake, and it took 6 to 9 months to change the internal attitude to support the new venture. Next time I did that, I was much smarter. So you've got to get buy-in. It's important whenever you're doing something new. So First and Show needs to get buy-in from their folks who are doing kennel sales to buy into this new idea. Otherwise, they're going to get resistance. Customer service, hugely important. Before the sale, most marketers think about before the sale. That's what we're doing kind of when we create a marketing plan. But then we also have to have customer service at the moment or point of sale. And then we have to have customer service after the sale. And the after the sale thing is often forgotten, but it may be the most important customer service in order to maintain and grow your market. So before the sale, at the moment of the sale, and after the sale, you want to meet your needs and expectations. You want to attract customers. You definitely want to retain customers, and you want to satisfy customers. Retaining and satisfying requires after-sale service. Really, really important. If you do it right, you're going to reinforce the product or brand positioning, and you're going to improve your performance. If you do it wrong, especially in these days of canceling and various other things on social media, once you've done something wrong, the wrong is amplified with a huge megaphone. So you really have to make sure that you provide the best service possible. You also have to assume that at some point you're going to screw up, because customer service is never perfect every time. So you have to have a contingency plan. What happens if I screw up? What happens if I'm running a restaurant and my waitress spills coffee on a customer? What happens if the steak is overdone? What happens if whatever? How do I deal with that? And I should know what I'm going to do before it happens, because you know that mistakes are going to happen. How do I deal with the customer service side in the event that it happens? And how do I deal with it in a way that will retain and satisfy the customers? So that's kind of your customer service thing. Key importance, the 3 kinds of objectives: marketing, financial, and societal objectives. The internal marketing that's so often forgotten, definitely get buy-in from your existing organization. And then customer service, key. Service after the sale is a key piece of any marketing plan. Okay, that wraps it up. There'll be a few questions after this. And we will next week go into prep for the you'll go into prep for the quest, and there'll be a quest to be taken before spring break. Thanks very much.